colors, and welcome back to Show Me Your Florals. We are on day 4 today, and I really hope you've been able to practice with your layers, blend modes and layer masks. Your new knowledge is going to come in super handy today as we are going to start painting watercolors. It's so exciting. If you haven't watched any of the previous videos yet, I very much recommend that you watch those first and then come back to this video, as some of the things I'm about to show you might not make a lot of sense. So yes, the fundamentals of watercolor painting on the iPad. Other than lettering, this is my absolute favorite thing to do on the iPad, and I've practiced this for a very long time. I've always dreamed of being able to recreate beautiful looking watercolors on the iPad, and now with Procreate 5 and some of the amazing brush features, this dream has come very close to reality. And the same as when you paint with real watercolors on paper, watercolors on the iPad requires a little bit of practice as well, but it's a lot of fun as well. So let's jump right in. The first technique we are going to try out is the wet on dry technique. This is not too hard to recreate on the iPad, and I'm sure you'll be able to master this very soon. The key here is to work with lower opacity on the brush to make the shapes overlap. Let me show you how this works. We are going to use the old beach brush for this, and you'll see here the opacity is set to around 60%, and then the size doesn't matter too much. Maybe 20% is fine. So now we're going to create this swatch here, and never lift up the Apple Pencil from the screen to create this shape like this. So now this is almost like the first layer of watercolors, and then if we create a second layer, we can pretend this is dry now. Luckily we don't have to wait on the iPad for the paint to dry. So now we're going to paint over this, and you can see now how this overlaps. So this is very similar to what would happen if you were painting a second layer on top of your first layer. Very easy. You can also choose a slightly different color, and the same thing happens here as well. And then the next technique we are going to try out is the wet on wet technique. And this is my favorite style because it's loose and unpredictable, and it creates unique and very beautiful results. We are going to use the wet sponge brush for this, and I'm also going to create a new layer so I can show you. So let's use that wet sponge brush, and then maybe let's choose pink. So now if you paint here, you'll see how the color gets put on the page quite randomly. And now what you do with this brush, you just keep painting without lifting the Apple Pencil, and you use different pressure to create this effect. You can also tap on the screen, and then you get this little bit of a splatter effect here as well. And then we can move the colors around on the screen like this. And as you can see, emulating the wet on wet technique is quite challenging, and this was definitely a lot trickier before we had the amazing Procreate 5 Brush Studio. Now let's see how we can make this a little bit easier, and let's use one of the brushes I made. We're going to select the IPL Blossoms brush now. So now I'm going to start painting with quite a lot of pressure to start with, but then as we paint along, we slightly take the pressure off to create this beautiful blend here. Isn't this much nicer than what we had before? I'm so happy about this, but it requires a little bit of practice, so we need to do that a few times to figure out how much pressure you need to put on your pencil and when to take it off as well. So this is now your homework as well. I want you to try this out and create these gradients. This is very similar to what you would do with real watercolors. So I really think this is a great little drill. And so the key here really is to never lift the Apple Pencil off the page, but just keep painting until you are happy with the result. And then of course we can also add some different colors. So maybe let's use orange, and then make this blend into the pink. So now I'm going to start from this side and then paint over here, and then try and blend these together. So now you can see that the blending doesn't work that nicely, but this is where the smudging tool comes in. So now let's select the same brush with the smudging tool. Got the IPL Blossoms brush selected, and then the opacity is around about 54%. And don't make this too big to start with. I've got it set to about 35%. And now we can smudge these colors together. Don't use too much pressure. Ever so slight pressure will be great. So now we can blend those colors together. You can even blend your gradient a little bit as well. And then this looks very nice. So really, the lighter the pressure you use, the easier it is to blend these colors together. You could even blend it here a little bit more as well. But definitely try using more pressure as well, just to see the effect you can get with the brush. So now if you press more, you can see it sort of disperses the color on a more unpredictable way, but this is what we want, right? This is almost like painting with real watercolors. And then you get these really cool patterns here, and then you can really sort of make it look like watercolor and sort of see the water flow on the page. And so your homework for today is to practice the different techniques. Start with the wet on dry technique using the old beach brush. And then next up is the wet on wet technique using the wet sponge brush. And then last but not least, we want to be able to create these beautiful gradients and then also make the colors flow into each other. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I think you're going to have so much fun practicing this. In case you haven't watched yesterday's video yet, I'm going to bloop it up here as well, so you can watch it and then you can catch up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.